morning, everyone. My name is Bashi Periste. Welcome to Techstars Startup Atlanta Week. I work at Invesco, and I will be your moderator for today. We're super excited to have you join us today. We are going to be discussing failing fast, whether it's on the software development cycle or building teams. If you have any questions throughout the panel, feel free. Within the stage, you have a messaging chat window, so type them in there. There's also a designated time through the panel to answer any questions you have. I would like to introduce you to our three panelists. I'm going to start with Catherine.
Thank you, Bashi. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I hope you're all well. My name is Catherine Garbutt, and I've been working at Invesco for 18 months. I head up our customer experience proposition within our global infrastructure function. So what that means is that my customers are all the Invesco employees, and my team provide support and identify performance gaps that cause internal customer friction, and generally engage with the business to consult on which of our products and services help them be most productive and efficient at their jobs. So I'm delighted to be here with you today, and I hope I can offer you some insight that you'd find useful. So with that, I'll go on to Joe.
Hey everybody, I am Joe Piccarello. I am the Global Head of Distribution Technology at Invesco, so responsible for all of the technology related to the sales and service, client reporting, as well as the transfer agency for Invesco.
Great, thank you, Joe. Peter.
Hey everybody, good to be back today. My name is Peter Van Hengel. I am the head of engineering for emerging technology within the strategy, innovation, and planning team at Invesco. Within our team, we have three core capabilities. We do machine learning, AI, ML. We have a competency in that. We have a UI, UX, which we spoke a lot about yesterday, which was a great session. And we've got our full stack engineering squads focused on, full stack development. So I'm excited to talk to you guys today and have this panel around failing fast.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Peter. We're going to go ahead and kick off the panel. So the first question I have is, fail fast, fail often. It can actually be quite controversial, and the one thing that most can agree on is the importance of failing smart. Joe, can you share with us some insight on how you can promote smart failure within your team?
Yeah, I think when you look at failure, it's one, you have to learn to embrace it and have it be a positive word. I know traditionally it's a negative word inside of organizations, but failure is just another word for learning. So how do you learn faster? So getting your teams to understand how to learn faster as opposed to fail faster is going to be key. And what that really means is, how do you understand and take a problem that you need to solve and break it down into its smallest possible experiment? So it doesn't take you 3 months, 9 months, a year to kind of figure out if something works. How can you reduce it to what's the core of the thing that you want to test and find the quickest and easiest way to test that? And if it works, great. If it doesn't, what did you learn? And then decide whether you need to tweak or have a pivotal conversation around maybe a direction change.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joe. Catherine, can you share with us about a time where you made a wrong turn in developing a team and what you learned from it?
Sure. I've been doing this for 20 years in terms of developing and creating teams. So it'd probably be easier if I just share with you some of my top learnings, because I've made some whopping mistakes during that time. And I think the first one is, before you create or develop any team, is that you interview everyone, and I mean everyone, on what they are expecting from your function and from what your team needs to do. Interview your market, your customers, your prospective customers, your investors, your executives, stakeholders, family, friends, people you like, people you don't like. Get as many interviews as possible in order to get as many perspectives as possible. Aim for the hundreds and ask them, what do they believe your team should offer? And normally your clients and partners will only ever care about service, experience, delivery, convenience. So make sure all your questions are around that, and be prepared to get hundreds of different perspectives. But because of all that insight you've gained, you'll find innovation that you haven't even considered. You'll start to get a clearer picture of the gap you're filling, your proposition, your niche. And the mistakes I've made in the past is by getting too few perspectives and acting upon those. And then secondly, once you've got all that information, you start to find your North Star, a clear statement of your team's purpose. That's going to be crucial. So, and don't think it will happen as time goes on. This is a fundamental layer of how you want your culture to be, and making sure that you and your team are supported by a crisp definition and guiding principles that embody how you work. So as soon as you start forming that, don't just come up with it on your own either. Involve your team, get your team involved. It's really important for them to be involved. It will make them personal to them, it will make it relevant, and it will encourage them to walk the walk when handling your clients and partners. In fact, if you do have a team that are going to be customer facing, it's probably imperative to include them in any operational business decisions. It will heighten their engagement. They'll feel they're part of a people first team, but it also means that there's a strong correlation between your customer satisfaction rate as well. And then I think finally, the third one, which is probably just as important, is your hiring strategies. Don't hire everyone that appears to be like you. It will make things super easy at the beginning and fun, but it's diversity of thought that makes a successful team. And the only way to be truly innovative and promote lateral thinking is to have that diversity. Otherwise, you may as well hire the same person and just pay them multiple times. Similarly, don't just go for the smartest candidate from the top university every time. Absolutely have a few. But not everyone. It's, apart from being difficult to manage, you'll just end up with just one solution all the time, and you won't have that cognitive diversity. So think about the dynamics of your team, what you want from differing backgrounds. You want people with different personalities and people who can bring to the party different perspectives from different industries as well. Of course, they should all be talented in some shape or form, but all must be hungry for progress and change. Does that help? Hello?
Yep,
you got it.
perfect. Okay. Thank you so much, Catherine. Really appreciate it. Peter, so as the head of engineering for strategy and innovation team, how do you construct a good fail fast MVP? Can you share with the audience, please?
Yeah, absolutely, Bashi. I think I kind of want to start by building on something that Joe said that was really important in terms of getting your team prepared to embark on an MVP, whatever that might be, right? Not all of them are going to be successful, and embracing a culture of accepting failure, and most importantly, what Joe said is learning from your failures, right? I think it's less. I think failure, and, we all have heard, the great techies of the world talk about their different philosophies on failing fast, failing safe, failing quickly. I think it's less about, the adjective that you attach to the failure and more about taking the learning from it and applying it to things in the future. So specifically when it comes down to engineering and building MVPs, within our team, we like to say scrappy, if you will, but scrappy doesn't mean production worthy. Scrappy means able to fail safely, able to fail quickly. Yesterday, I mentioned a platform, and I think the idea behind failing fast and failing safe is very much having a safety net there and being able to reuse a lot of the components that you've built. So if you can begin to make contributions towards a platform, whether it be component libraries, reusable libraries, Python code, React code, artifacts in Java that you can use over and over, the cost of failure becomes a lot less, and it becomes much safer because you're building Lego blocks and you're just tearing them down and reassembling them to produce different things. So the more you can encourage your teams while they're delivering MVPs to deliver in a way where if they have to tear it apart, those blocks can be put back together in a way to produce something new, something different, something innovative for the business. It costs a little bit more in the short term, but in the long term, it pays huge dividends because you can assemble and build things much more quickly. So I would encourage, when you think about embarking on an MVP, adding a little bit of time up front in order to componentize the work that you're doing, and learning about it and teaching each other how to use those components in new ways really reduces the cost of failure and makes it much safer and frankly more productive when you do fail to start working on your next thing.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Peter. That's great insight. Joe, anything you'd like to add to the team of development?
Yeah, no, I think what Peter said there is key. One, it is learnings, and any of the learnings that you can reuse will be. I think the one thing I would probably add to my.
Oh, I think we lost Joe.
Yeah, power cord there.
Oh no. Okay. While we try to hope that Joe makes it back, I think, Peter, I'm going to ask you another thing. So within your team of development, when do you have the pivot or persevere conversation? Like at what point do you have to jump in and tell the team it's time to pivot?
Yeah, I mean, I think from my perspective, I'm in background. I think it's really the product owner's responsibility to help make that call. The thing that's really great about Agile is you can adjust course very quickly and iterate, and you can learn and you can deliver. But in order to make a bigger call, like a bigger course correction, to deem, hey, is this time to stop? Did we fail, or did we learn enough to say this isn't feasible or can't move forward? You really have to work, kind of with your architects of your team. If it's a technical impediment or issue that can't be solved, if it's a business issue, you have to work hand in hand with your customers and your clients and your stakeholders, right? And so I think a good product owner should be able to help identify when it's time to say stop. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Catherine, how do you adopt a fail fast culture on your team when usually the pressures from above is not to fail, right? And focus on succession.
Yeah, we should probably just be a bit clear on what that question means. So the culture being promoted here is that it's safe to fail, but when you do, you learn from those failures and you don't repeat them. You view them as an opportunity to learn, you adapt, and you don't look for blame. What you don't want is a culture where people are too terrified to report a mistake. I mean, you wouldn't put them in that position where if somebody failed, they lose $1 million or, the business goes down. It's, have some controls, but it is safe to have those failures while striving for success, as long as you learn, adapt quickly and just recover. And I think the pressures from above is that we're to succeed overall. They still want us to learn and change direction, reframe, and being able to react super quickly to a fast changing market or environment, and take a risk. So it's understood that there will be an element of failure as part of that process. And one good thing about COVID, if I can say that, is that it's catapulted us 5 years into the future, and it's forced us and my team particularly to fail fast and pivot and leap into digitization and fail again. And it was safe to do that. And it was okay because the clients and the partners were quite forgiving while we worked it out. And being agile means that, fails are easier to adapt to and fix, as long as we don't shroud our processes and our procedures into so many steps and touch points, and it makes it hard to do that. With my service desk, for example, this year we had spent hours, hundreds of hours, mulling over loads of upskilling and culture initiatives. We had a whole 12-month campaign and plan. And after just 4 weeks, we realized that this isn't going to work for us. Actually, we need to focus on their fundamental systems. Actually, this is what the customer uses. This is what the employees use. And then COVID happened, and we had to jump into that direction even quicker. And we didn't see that as a failure. We had to park all those plans and waste all that time. But that wasn't a failure, it was a gripe for sure. What we learned was not to be so prescriptive in our planning, to be more flexible, to be able to meet the needs of our market. And it's just keep our eye on the end goal, that North Star, and it's about getting there rather than the journey taken to get there. So, we say to our teams, value exploration, try a different approach, a new way of adding value, and don't be afraid if it doesn't always work out. Just learn, adapt, and keep your eye on the ball and bounce back.
Yeah, Catherine, I think you made some really great points that I just wanted to emphasize on and build on a little bit. In terms of identifying when to pivot, it can be hard. And I think having good metrics and good KPIs and being able to measure your goals is really important, right? Because failure is somewhat subjective, right? And like we were talking about before, you can change course. But having good numbers and data to back up, are you achieving what you set out to do, and making sure you define those early, whether it be SLAs, whether it be number of story points delivered, release dates, major milestones, whatever your metrics might be, user adoption, right, conversions, asset gathering, if it's, if you're trying to go after a new customer base. So I think those indicators, the subjective, the objective, are things that really help identify when things are going well and when they're not. And it takes a little bit of the guesswork out of the whole thing.
I think you're on mute.
You might be on mute.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Okay, perfect. I went on mute to make sure there's no background noise, and then I forget. Okay, so some questions from the audience. The first one is, what are the most common attitudes that cause failure of a project team? Catherine or Peter, who wants to kick it off?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think it's a great question because a bad performing team can just fail. I think a rotten egg spoils the bunch, rotten apple spoils the bunch kind of thing. You have to look. To me, it's really 3 dimensions, and whenever we do our quarterly check-ins, if every individual on the team is learning, teaching, and delivering value, it forces a culture of, if you're not teaching others and you're not learning from others, you're not collaborating, right? So it's not okay to just deliver. You have to collaborate. And if you're going to build things that are reusable, like I was talking about before, you have to teach each other how to use it. Otherwise, you don't establish that culture.
Absolutely. It's about just the level of commitment and the passion to change and to progress as well. It's great to have lots of different personalities and perspectives, but we've all got to agree on one thing, and that is, to move forward and have that energy that supports that, and understand what your stakeholders and your business need from you and what you need to do, and be accountable.
Awesome. Thank you. The second question we have from the audience is, what are some counterintuitive actions that allows you to be successful when leading a project?
Yeah. So from a counterintuitive perspective. I mean, I think we have to put a little bit of thought into it. But certainly, you know, taking more time, slowing down, thinking is somewhat counterintuitive, right? Like we're all wired to deliver, particularly the engineers, we're wired to just solve, and not exploring the possible solutions or getting the diversity of thought. I think sometimes slower is better. So that's somewhat counterintuitive because it'll pay back in the long run.
Perfect. Catherine, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and I'm back to that diverse team. You know, everyone on my leadership team is in one quadrant. You know, they are extremely diverse in the way they operate. We have those that are really high Ds that, you know, really make decisions fast and move fast. And then we have the others, the calculators, the one that need all the data to be able to make a logical decision. And actually, you know, we work really well together as a result, even if our natural personality style isn't to look at all the data and think and slow down a bit, and it really helps us be more successful in the end. So no, I agree with it.
Awesome. Thank you. Next question is, what kind of metrics do you look at on your team?
For my team, it's a customer experience team. So everything's customer focused. The ultimate goal is customer satisfaction, a business partner satisfaction with the products and the services and the technology experience that we provide. Now, and I've spoken about this a lot, we have so many metrics these days. You can just get inundated with the data. What you want to do is really refine it to your top 2 or 3. You know, you can drill down as much as you like, but we look at you know, customer effort and customer satisfaction and that those sort of things. What we don't do is look at, you know, operational attainment. So, you know, we don't go onto our service desk and say you've been on the phone too long or you've been in hold too long or anything like that. The customer comes first. They need as long as they need on a customer call. It doesn't matter how long they need. And that's why we look at our first contact resolution. So if you take as long as possible that customer to stop them having to have the effort to call back, then that's just as important. So they all have to be surrounded rather than the team individual performances. It's got to be the customer satisfaction and work backwards from there.
I love that, Catherine. Very client-centric, which is great. Yeah. Peter, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, definitely. I think, you know, I think having a client-centric approach it is critical, right? Understanding the metrics. I like to break our metrics down into 2 categories, leading and lagging metrics. And so whenever we look at our initiatives within our team, we try to, the hard ones are the leading metrics, right? Like how deep is our backlog? How many backlog items are we adding? Because those are telling us that we have good engagement with our customers, right? It says that our product owners, our team, our squads are going out and getting information of stuff that they want to prioritize and work on. So those don't necessarily mean what they're doing is going to be effective, right? Those are metrics that are saying we have stuff to work on. The lagging metrics are those which are, you know, you can use, you know, pick your tool, Google Analytics. You've written some code, right? And you want to see are you getting engagement? Are you getting the conversions? Are you getting the adoption? Are you getting whatever goals you set out to be? So those are kind of lagging metrics. So you kind of want to just balance those 2. And then right in the middle, there's kind of this 3rd category of metrics, which is really your team performance metrics, right? So if you're looking at lines of code added, Slack metrics, or if you're looking at time to completion, your velocity, right? Those kinds of things, the Git commits, how many branches are created per week, how many developers are contributing, who's doing pull requests when. That kind of middle shows how your software factory, if you will, is running. So I think if you kind of take the 2 pillars on each end, make sure that you've got a good runway ahead, that what you're doing is effective and that you're performing well, if you balance those three, you're pretty much setting yourself up at least to be able to identify why things might be going off the rails.
Okay, so to follow up on that, when can you classify something as a failure and cut your losses? So say, you know, whether it's within your team, Catherine, which a good example would be Skype versus Microsoft Teams, or Peter, whether it would be your POC and MVPs that your team are developing. At what point do you say, you know what, it's a failure, we got to pivot?
Sorry, Peter.
Yeah, no, sorry. I mean, I was just going to say, for us, we fail. We fail. We don't call it failure, particularly in the machine learning space and the modeling space. We fail, right? We fail because we don't deliver a viable product. But what we've identified is that it's too crystal ballish, right? Like everybody wants to predict the stock market, and everybody wants to build a machine learning algorithm that takes Twitter and Google and blah 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 and aggregates it. And so it becomes too crystal ballish. So we never really call it failure. What we say is we've learned that this isn't feasible today, given the things that we know, and we adjust.
What about you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's about what you interpret a failure as being. I've got a whole heap of projects and things that we spent money on, expensive, you know, that we've parked for now. And that's down to business needs, business reception, customer feedback. It wasn't ready in its current state in that way. You know, so we've parked it, we've learned some lessons, and we will revisit a certain time. But yeah, everything from us comes from the business feedback. And if the business feedback and the qualitative feedback that we take, it's not just a score, it's their qualitative feedback is telling us this isn't the right thing for them right now. Even if we think it is, then, you know, let's park that and we'll revisit and circle back later on.
Great. We have a great question in the audience. So knowing that a lot of our audience is entrepreneurs, do you think there is a difference of tolerance for failure within the entrepreneurship and startup world versus experiences in the corporate environment like Invesco?
So I've worked at both environments, and what I found within a startup world compared to a really established, well-established organization is there's less legacy, there's less old frameworks, and there's less processes and policies, and there's more agility to move quickly. You tend to be smaller, you tend to have the people at the top actually wearing lots of different hats, and everybody's involved in all the different roles that need to be before it becomes larger and more established. So it's very much hands-on and everybody's involved. So absolutely, there's a huge difference there. So it's a question, different tolerances for failures. So I think as a startup, you are already expecting to fail because you're trying a lot of things out, whether that's a product, a service, a way of thinking. You're still developing your teams. You're probably still trying to work out what skill set is needed in each of your areas. And so you're refining that. So yes, you've got a really high tolerance for failure, but it's good and it's helping you along to yourself to think like that.
Yeah, I agree. I think, you know, ideally they would be quite similar, right? I mean, the way many projects in mid to large size organizations get funded is quite similar, or at least it should be funded in a similar fashion to the way the VC world or startup world funds ideas, right? Particularly within SIP. I think the world gets a little bit blurry as we shift more into a run and enhance mode, right? Once you've proven something and it's become productized, it's a little bit different. But certainly at the early stages, I think it's quite similar to a certain extent how you would incubate the ideas.
Great. Can you share with us some ritual or activities that you do to be sure that the team is learning from these experiences?
Retros. I mean, retros are the lifeblood of feedback. probably, I mean, all ceremonies are important, but the retro and demo, you know, if you're not demoing usable products in your retros, or before or after as a part of the retro, and getting each other constructive feedback, you're going to be in a hard position.
Sorry, Peter, and just to kind of provide a little bit more clarity for those who might not know, what do you mean by a retro and a demo?
Sure. Yeah. In Agile, there are ceremonies. Sorry, I assumed everybody is Agile in this world. There's a handful of ceremonies in Agile. Definitely, I'm sure there's sessions on Agile that you could probably join. But a retro is at the end of a sprint. A sprint is a 1 or 2, possibly 3, maybe more week period of time. Ideally, 2 is kind of the sweet spot most teams follow. But it occurs at the end of a 2-week cycle, where you should be delivering value. You should be delivering usable, measurable product, whether it be designs or code or whatever it might be. But you should share that with your team and get your team's feedback and your product owner's feedback actively. And if those sessions aren't going well, your team's not going to be hearing each other's feedback within the team and from their stakeholders.
Catherine, what about your thoughts?
Yeah, so from a less sort of agile perspective, the collaboration amongst the team is absolutely key. So, even from the service desk agent taking the call, they fixed an issue, they've learned what the answer is. It's about documenting that so everyone else can learn from it. And you've got your knowledge base, you've got your your centre of sort of excellence, or your all sort of logged together, and people can learn from that. But then it's all about the leadership team. So you tackle. I'm very collaborative with my team. Everybody's from different walks of life, and it's about when you have got an issue, you look at it together and you promote that lateral thought, and everybody has an opinion, and and to look at that problem in a different light and bring to the party a different perspective. And as long as we have meetings every day, and we look at the operational issues of the day, we look at our strategy and forecasting, and it's about everybody having that voice to promote what they've learned in the past, get that documented, and take it from there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Catherine. Another great question from the audience, which is, how do you embed fail fast into a culture of a more risk-averse company and industry?
It's a really good question. It's about, for me, that's about your top-down engagement. That's about the executive level of the company appreciating that way of working. And as soon as they're on board, things become a lot easier to do, because this is about culture, right? And culture is, it's bottom-up engagement, it's top-down engagement. Everybody, you have to agree that this is the culture that you and your company want to promote. So if not everybody is singing off the same hymn sheet, then you're always going to have problems, even in more risk-averse or more well-established companies. So that needs to definitely be something that comes from the top. And if you're middle management and you're trying to get that engagement, it's about really pitching the importance of what you can achieve. You don't have to have a huge, you can just start with one team. You doesn't have to go everywhere, just to show the results that you're able to get with that level of flexibility, with that level of trust and empowerment for you and your team.
Yeah, I think
that's a great response.
I think also to add on to that a little bit, asking why, why are we risk averse? What are we trying to prevent? So setting up a safe zone, and what a safe zone looks like from a risk perspective, right? It could be a technical safe zone. It could be, in healthcare, maybe physically safe zones, right? So there's a lot of reasons that firms are risk risk aware and risk averse, but understanding and empathizing why and building a system around that, right? Putting speed limits, guardrails in place so that your team can safely operate and they're used to the norms, right? And they develop, their solutions in a safe and secure way that checks all the boxes, ideally with reusable components and opinions around how to deal with it, will make it easier the further, the further down your project you get.
Great. Joe, I see we have you. So while we have you, I'm going to quickly ask you a question. Welcome back.
Speaking, talk about failing fast or failing kind of slow in this situation, but I am back.
Excellent. So Joe, the audience wants to know, what was one big mistake you made in your company or within your team you wish you would have learned sooner?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll give you one in my personal life prior to Invesco in my startup life. So I'm a serial kind of entrepreneur. Started a lot of companies, and one of my early learnings was I had a product that I wanted to bring to market. It was recently after I had gotten married. I had this idea of there's no easy way to plan a wedding. It becomes very difficult. So in my mind, I came up with this product, but my failure in this is that I kept saying it's not ready to release. I need more features. It needs to be more feature rich. It needs to have more capabilities. It needs to have more. And I didn't pull the trigger on releasing. And what happened was, prior to me releasing, someone beat me to market on it, and I had a better mousetrap. I did, whereas if I would have released earlier, I may have been able to capture some of that. So my suggestion to everyone would be is, find those early experiments that you want, get it out soon and early and test. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good or great. And, in hindsight, I should have said, I would have liked to launch that 2 to 3, probably months before I did. So always consider that and try to get it out, try to get something out to react to sooner rather than later.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe. Well, I have you going on a good topic, and since you are helping with our distribution and sales, there's a question from Amber, and she wants you to tell her, do you think that agile methodology can be applied to sales and marketing departments?
Oh, absolutely. Someone who works very with the 3 global CMOs, I can say 100%. You can apply agile methodologies to just about anything. It really truly is understanding from a team perspective what you can accomplish and get to committed, repeatable outcomes of knowing what you can do, even for things that are dynamic. I think, a lot of people often apply, agile to a reproducible thing. I reproduce the same thing over and over, so we should apply agile. Agile is used quite frequently in things that are not repeatable. So software delivery is a great example. What we build for the marketing teams is, sometimes bespoke and different. So yes, agile should be there. The same agile methodologies do apply. Understand what you want. Understand the flow of the work and where to optimize, and constantly be looking for the teams to work on optimizing the way that they deliver, work on their commitments, but breaking the work up into small digestible pieces that are always delivering customer value. And I'll add to this, back to kind of my point about the previous, you can keep building, but the sooner you ship, the better. So, always understanding how can you get that smallest bite-sized increment out to the client. It may not be big bang, but how do you get one little incremental difference? So from a marketing standpoint, it may be on the website. One small feature, one small this or that. It doesn't always have to be big bang, every 6 months to a year release something. Constantly releasing and constantly learning, to Peter's point, constantly learning from that release. What worked? Set up your experiments. From a marketing perspective, are people going down the funnel as you expected? If not, and they're dropping out of the funnel, meaning if you're trying to make them get from point A to point B from website to checkout, if they're falling off, why are they falling off? Where are they falling off? Can we put some tests to understand? Let's put some different variations to see why they're failing. What if we give them different options? Does that work? So that agile iterative test, learn can be applied to sales, marketing, you name the industry, and it can be applied.
Yeah, and Joe, I think also just to add a bit, I mean, I'd like to know from Amber a little bit more, but in terms of, I interpreted the question both as a technologist, but also as can Agile be used in the business, right? Like if you're marketing a new product, I think, Agile can work really, really well in any area of a business where divide and conquer works well, right? Like if you can divide and conquer, and we're talking about dividing like a 2-pizza team, right? 5 people, 10 people max kind of thing. So if you're talking about like a regional sales team, sure, you could run it as an Agile team. You could have a plan for the next 2 weeks where everybody comes, they put all their client meetings into Atlassian, right, into Jira, and they iterate on it. They have the meetings. They put their notes in there. Now, is Atlassian Jira going to put Salesforce out of business? Probably not, right? But you do the same concepts in a Salesforce, like Joe said with the funnel, right? If you think of the funnel as a 2-week cycle or a cycle, you just have to get people into the mindset of sharing through the retro. Hey, what meetings went well? What deals did we win? What campaigns did well? Which ones didn't? Why? What can we do better next time? So certainly, I mean, it works great in software, but in all areas of the business, or at least most areas of the business, I think it can apply pretty easily.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So last question for the team is, what are your thoughts on a startup within a corporate enterprise? Like Coca-Cola did this freestyle, so curious on what you tried this or seen this elsewhere and your thoughts on its success.
Yeah, I can kick us off on this one. I think it definitely is doable. I think going back to the question before about making a safe, risk-free zone, I think there's brand reputation that can be put at risk if you have an innovation department doing things under a different brand and you need to test the market, right? So I think in some cases it works well. In other cases, if you're internal customers and you're trying to build product internally, you might not need to go down that path. It certainly adds a lot of administrative and legal overhead to have a separate startup legal entity, right? But it solves a lot of risk questions and a lot of questions that in large organizations, large enterprises, it might help. So certainly, it's a complicated question, probably warrants a whole session on its own. But again, no matter how it's structured, right? Like you're talking about corporate structure, is it an internal or external, or right? It still has to run. You're still achieving a similar result. So for me, that decision is more about what risk are we trying to mitigate by separating it out versus not. And then just to close out my thought, I think there is a large risk by having a separate area, an innovation branch or an innovation arm, that you actually don't change or you don't challenge the culture of the rest of the organization, which in a large enterprise, frankly, is probably just as valuable as whatever the innovation is itself. So it really boils down to, what are your goals and what do you want to try to measure? Are you trying to change your internal culture? Or are you trying to launch a new product to market and mitigate risk because you don't want it under your brand name?
Yeah, I'd add something similar there, Peter, as well, too, because I've done both. I've actually been in the incubators and started the incubators in large corporations. So prior to Invesco, I started a similar incubator inside Prudential, large organization. So there's pros and cons to that approach. The pros are you break the typical processes and protocols that can sometimes be archaic. And get you back to the core essence of it. If I'm starting a company from scratch, I wouldn't have the 17 steps to get this thing done. But to Peter's point, you ultimately work inside of that same corporation anyway, so you have to make sure the rules of the road are followed. You just may find a different way to do it, but you never escape the bureaucracy of, we're a company, we can't put up false statements. We're a company, we have to do certain checks and balances, but you do sometimes find a way to challenge the years of, I'll just call, process debt that has built up, and said maybe there's a smarter way to get this thing done, and challenge the way. And then to Peter's point, that challenging mindset of the why is it 17 steps in the big organization starts to make the cultural shift on the big organization. So the startup and the big corporation kind of meet in that middle of fine balance of agility, nimbleness, but also risk, de-risk it enough that we've got speed and de-risked.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So we are at times. I'm going to go to our panelists and ask whether they want to share one word of wisdom or they just want to wrap it up and how you can contact them. Again, thank you everybody for joining, and thank you Techstars for giving us the opportunity for such a great panel. Catherine, I'll hand it over to you for the closing remarks.
Thank you. I just really want to thank you for your time today. And if anyone would like to further discuss customer experience or service design and measures, please do contact me on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to share.
Awesome. Joe?
Yeah, I'll just go back to my first point. Every failure should be a learning. If you didn't structure the experiment to learn something from the get-go, it may be a learning with a positive outcome. It may be a learning with a negative outcome, but make sure whatever experiment you're trying to run, that it's got that answer of either success or failure, and then learn from it and decide whether it's a tweak or it's a critical conversation of maybe we should change course.
Thank you so much, Joe. Peter?
Yeah, thanks, everybody. This has been a great session. If I had to leave you with a couple of words, learning, teaching, delivery, measure, 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 right? I think, oh, and of course, platform. We can't forget platform, right? But those to me are the key takeaways here. You do those things, you're going to fail safe, you're going to fail fast, but it's not going to be failure.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you again so much, everyone. And please do visit our Invesco booth at the Expo. Thanks again. You can find any of us on LinkedIn. Have a great day. Thank you. Bye-bye.